You ever notice how the second a criminal does some violent, outrageous, unforgivable shit, we immediately start shopping for ways to make everybody else responsible for what happened? Not the criminal, not the system that failed to stop him, not the policies that let the problem fester. No. Somehow the conversation always circles back to, yeah, but did the victim respond perfectly? And that's the thought experiment I want to run today. Because Abba and Preach just dropped a video about the Bondi attack in Australia. And one moment in particular is the entire moral debate in a nutshell. Abba asked the question that everybody wants to dodge.
When you're in a fight for your life and someone has taken the liberty to decide that they want to take other folks' lives, do you have to risk your own life and try to spare them?
Now, before anybody faints, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm talking about reality versus fantasy, because the fantasy is once you disarm him, he's no longer a threat. Reality is the threat isn't the tool, it's the intent. And they go straight for the uncomfortable truth.
Because your intentions were bad. And the only thing that stops violent bad people is violent good people. Stay violent.
And then they bring up the part that nobody wants to talk about. The legal standard we demand from normal people in chaos.
You put a random citizen in an impossible situation, asking them to have the perfect reaction.
That sentence right there, that's the whole point. Because we're living in a world where a criminal can be sloppy, reckless, and violent, but the law-abiding person has to be a surgeon, a therapist, a hostage negotiator, a constitutional scholar, a Navy SEAL, all at the same time. So here's a question I want you to sit with. If someone is actively trying to kill you and you stop them, do you now owe them a second chance at the cost of your life? Or are we finally going to admit that self-defense isn't a moral purity contest? It's a survival problem. Look, this whole conversation is basically the definition of F around and find out. Because FAFO, as you can see right here on my hat, isn't just some internet phrase people throw around for likes. It's a law of nature. You don't get to terrorize innocent people, roll the dice with violence, and then demand everyone treat you like you're in a group therapy circle. That's why I made the FAFO philosophy apparel. It's not about being tough. It's about being honest. Honest about consequences. Honest about reality. Honest about the fact that evil doesn't respond to inspirational quotes. So if you want to rep that mindset, we have them in hats, shirts, hoodies, drinkware, you name it. I'm gonna put a link in the description section for you to check it out. And while you're here, let me give you a practical PSA. If you train, especially if you train a lot, you already know your ears don't get stronger. They just get more damaged. That's why I always wear my favorite wireless Bluetooth in-ear hearing protection, the AKT1 Blackouts, because I want something that protects my hearing, doesn't feel like a science project on my head, and is simple enough that I'll actually use it every time. They come with 6-time hearing enhancement, active noise blocking, and I can take phone calls and listen to music all while I'm shooting, still be aware of what's going on around me while actively protecting my hearing. That's why I like to call these the AirPod for shooters. So I'm gonna put a link in the description section where you can go check these out too at shop.mrcolionnoir.com and protect your hearing, man. And then go get you some FAFO gear. So here's why Abba and Preach's video hit a nerve in a good way. First, context. Abba and Preach are Canadian creators who cover everything from culture to politics to social issues. And if you've been around my channel for a minute, you already know who Preach is because I actually did a Shooting with Noir episode with him when he came to the US. Dude's a solid human, and their content is consistently thoughtful even when you disagree with them. Now, this video is titled, Why Do We Defend Criminals So Much? And the center of it is a moment from that shooting where a hero disarms an attacker and doesn't shoot him after gaining control of the rifle. And that's when they say something that sounds crazy until you remember what world we live in.
If I'm rolling around with you and I get the firearm, either I'm blasting you with it right away, or I'm taking the butt of it and I'm bashing your head in. One or the other. Got told by a bunch of people that you can't do that, it's not right. You gotta give the person a chance to surrender or whatnot.
Now, let me translate what people hear versus what he's actually saying. People hear he wants to execute someone. What he's really saying is, I don't have the luxury of being wrong. Because when you're in that situation, you don't know if there's another weapon, is there an accomplice, if the person is stalling, if you're about to get shot again. And their point gets backed up brutally by the exact example they bring up.
After they tussled for the weapon and got up, he pulled his second weapon and he ended up blasting them and they passed away.
That's the part that should sober everyone up, because the moral fantasy says once the first weapon is gone, you're safe. However, reality says you might have just stepped into the second chapter of the problem. And this is where the conversation gets interesting, because I agree with their premise, but I want to tighten it with a little more precision. Self-defense isn't a vibe, it's a legal standard. The hardest part about these debates is that people conflate three things. what you can do morally, what you can do legally, and what you can do practically in 3 seconds while your heart is trying to escape your chest. They are essentially arguing, don't demand perfection from civilians in chaos. And you know what? I agree. But we also have to be careful not to give the impression that the standard is anything goes either, because even they acknowledge the devil's advocate.
If I'm gonna play devil's advocate, well, what they would say is you don't want to encourage people to panic and then start firing off the cuff. Meaning, like, what if the person who says, like, I'm gonna just shoot, I'm not taking risks because I'm afraid for my life. Someone else comes running up, you don't know if it's friendly or another accomplice, you shoot them too.
That's a real concern. The line matters. Not because criminals deserve mercy, but because innocent people deserve safety from you too. So the right way to frame this is what is reasonable under the circumstance, and that's where the conversation gets mature. You see, surrender can be real, and it can also be a trap. They take it further and say basically, surrender doesn't even matter at that point.
Too late to surrender. You done shot a couple of people, you're going down. Surrender or not, bye-bye.
Now, here's the thought experiment. If you're a civilian with no backup, no radio, no training pipeline, no partner watching your six, and the attacker says, I surrender, are you supposed to gamble that he's sincere? Or are you allowed to assume he's trying to create an opening? That's not a bloodthirsty question. That's a human survival question. The practical point they make is underrated. Abba says he might not even shoot with the rifle because he probably doesn't even know how it runs.
Me, be honest with you, I ain't even shooting. I'm grabbing the butt of the weapon and I'm just keep banging his head in. Because if I don't know how that rifle works, and that was like a long rifle, I ain't shot those, I ain't worked with those before, I ain't even gonna bother.
That's one of the most honest lines in the whole video, because people who don't train imagine guns like they're all iPhones, like just swipe up and it works. But no, that's not the case. Different platforms, different safeties, different controls, different failure points, which is why I always say if you're going to be responsible for your safety, you have to train with what you carry, not just shoot it once. Train until your hands know what to do while your brain is panicking. We don't execute, we stop threats. This is the big one. There's a philosophical argument in the culture that says if you're a good person, you don't do what they do. And Abba responds with the clarification that matters.
I'm not someone, out of some joy. I'm randomly for my own safety.
Yeah.
Because they're an imminent threat to me. Like, I'm not looking at this person like they're defenseless. I'm saying I don't know if they're an imminent threat. They could still be.
That is the cleanest framing. Imminent threat, not revenge, not punishment. Stop the threat. And if we can get more people to understand that difference, these conversations become less emotional and more useful. So here's where I land. I think Abba and Preach are touching the nerve that society keeps ignoring. We have developed this weird habit of demanding moral perfection from the person reacting to evil while constantly making excuses for the person committing it. And if you're gonna carry, or even if you're just thinking about what you do in a nightmare scenario, the real adult conversation is this. The threat is intent, not the object. Disarming doesn't guarantee safety. Civilians will never react perfectly, but also your actions still have to be reasonable because innocent people still matter. And yes, sometimes reality forces decisions that feel ugly. That's not because law-abiding people are bad. It's because criminals drag everybody into the dirt with them. All that being said, Abba and Preach make great content, and this is exactly the type of uncomfortable conversation more people need to hear. I didn't play the full video here on purpose because I want you to go watch it in context on their channel. I'm putting the link in the description section, so go check out Abba and Preach's full video, then come back here and tell me where you land. What's too far? What's not far enough? And what do you think a reasonable citizen should be expected to do in chaos? One thing's for certain and two things are for sure. Politicians and tech giants don't want gun content to be recommended to you. And we're all fighting this culture war together. Now, you can help do your part by liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel, but most importantly, sharing this video with at least one person. Together, we can stop the suppression of our 2A rights. And don't forget to click the link in the description section of this video for the products that I mentioned in this video.